to another edition of Rooted to Rising podcast with Christine Hummel. As a reminder to all, this podcast is to give confidence to those women of all ages, to make sure that we are sharing our stories as other females, to provide confidence and ultimately choosing what individual happiness they would like. Today I have a special guest with me, Ream Qato, and she's going to help join us and explain her journey personally and professionally and where she's gotten today and where she wants to go. So Ream, I'll turn it over to you if you can, an introduction of yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Christine. I'm really excited about this and looking forward to this conversation. So, an introduction about myself. Usually, the question is, tell me about your professional journey and all of this, but about myself. So I'm a Chicago-born native. I was born on the south side of Chicago, Palestinian American, Muslim woman that was in the Midwest most of my life, and have kind of went to the West Coast for a little bit and came back and have seen a lot of personal growth and development, and have a lot of reflection in terms of how my career has progressed.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what you went to college for, what you studied, and then actually, are you doing what you went to college for, and how you got to do whatever you started doing and how you did it.
Does anyone do what they went to college for, Christine?
And does anyone know what they want to do when they grow up? No.
Yeah. Well, my son does. He wants to be a pilot. Okay, he's
That's
6
very
years old.
specific.
He knows exactly where he wants to fly to. So I went to the University of Chicago, again, South Side Chicago girl. Studied chemistry. It was a surprise to me. I went in, studied chemistry, actually interviewed for PhD programs, was about to enroll in a PhD program within academia in LA. And then I'll never forget it. I sat down with my father on the dining table, and it was like pros and cons, because my dad's a pharmacologist.
Okay.
So he didn't pursue a professional degree. He had a PhD in pharmacology, and we said, okay, what are the pros and cons of going the PhD route versus another area I was pursuing was pharmacy school. So something a lot more career driven. You go to pharmacy school, you get a job. It's a lot more secure than an academic route. At least that was the perspective I had. So we went down, did the pros and cons, and I think for my dad it was more about pros and cons of moving to LA and not necessarily pros and cons of like the degrees per se. But it was a very structured exercise and landed on going to pharmacy school instead. Went to the University of Illinois at Chicago for my PharmD. And after that, I practiced for a few years in the retail setting, in the specialty pharmacy setting, and then also for Illinois Medicaid, through a contract that they have with the university, and quickly saw, this is a touchy subject these days in terms of government inefficiencies. But before Elon Musk saw them, I saw some government inefficiencies and decided that a clinician wasn't best suited to make business decisions. So because of that, went back to school at the University of Chicago and got my MBA from Booth. After that, went back to the payer side at a larger PBM, and then came out west for a bit to join a distributor.
So thanks for all that. Let's go back to maybe when you sat down at the table with your dad. So you said he was helping you make decisions on which career path, but you threw in there, or is it between Chicago and LA? So maybe what did he talk to you about, or were there biases that he didn't want you to move away? And that looking back, would you have changed anything or handled the conversation differently with him?
So I love my dad, and I think it was actually also an exercise for him to get used to the concept of me possibly going to LA and being a little bit more structured about it. Because I think for him, the choice was clear, like Chicago. But at the same time, there were other considerations. So my parents are both within academia, very kind of humble backgrounds. And what it meant to go to pharmacy school was I'd be paying full tuition. But within academia, there was no cost. I was going to be fully subsidized. And, if you're in any strong PhD program, you don't really enter a PhD unless they're paying you to come do the research. So it was a very different set of questions. And so for my dad, it was a balance of, okay, financially, one makes more sense in the near term, but that means my daughter goes to LA.
Yeah.
And then the other one financially maybe didn't make the most sense in the near term, but she stays in Chicago. So I think
Got
that
it.
was a little bit of what was going. So
Yep.
I think it allowed him to also structure what he thought was best for me. So it benefited both of us, and I wouldn't change it. No, I think I'm very happy with the decision. At the end of the day, I think the key part of the pros versus cons exercise was what would I be doing day to day, and being in a PhD lab in a basement at a university for 7 years. Anyone who knows me is just like not my personality. I would not have survived 7 years doing experiments by myself. That's what made the decision to go to pharmacy school.
And then what did your mom do? You mentioned she was also in academia.
Yeah, so my mom's an educator. She teaches at a local private school in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, and she's really she's been always an inspiration for me. So um, she studied in college in Ramallah in Palestine, and then moved once she got married after college, which was very rare then.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very rare then that like she finished parts of her. She went to a teaching college. She finished that, got married to my dad, who she knew from the local town, Tulkarem, and then they went to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where she got another bachelor's degree in psychology. They came back to the U.S. because of my dad's academic journey, and she hadn't gone back to school. But in her 50s, she did. She went back to San Xavier University in Chicago, got her master's
Wow.
in education, but has been teaching since the late 80s when they came to Chicago.
So do you have other siblings in your family?
I do. So there's 7 kids in our family.
Wow.
So we're a big, mighty bunch for sure. I'm like not really the middle child. I'm just like younger than that. So I'm like the second generation of kids. So we come in chunks. I have four older sisters, and then myself, and then one brother and a younger sister. So we're also a
Okay.
family of girls. I
Yeah.
don't always feel sorry for my brother, but I think it's always been a fun time.
So it's interesting that your mom, to your point, went to school during that time and in that country, and then even continued with her bachelor's. So then she took a break, it sounds like, because she had 7 kids at home.
Yeah.
But then when they were raised, she continued her career.
Yeah, and she actually was always, she didn't really take a break. She was teaching as well. So she had a teaching degree when she was in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
So she was teaching with kids. And I think that's something that I always learned from my parents is like women sometimes feel pressure to put their own personal interests and passions aside for family. And that's something that I always saw. My mom enjoys teaching. She enjoys this, uh, you know, working and having her own career and being independent in that way. And that's something she's always instilled in us. And my dad always encouraged with us.
Which is amazing to have 2 parents like that, actually, just from that generation and then from a
Yeah,
different country, right? But
yeah.
so, what do you think today? Taking what what your parents and your mom specifically did, what you did, because you had great mentors, right? You had your mom and your dad that supported you to continue on in an academia setting. Like, what would you tell the younger generation of kids, and think about like those girls and men and women graduating high school and college, because I do think it's very competitive these days. It's very complicated. There's a whole bunch of social media that's impacting these kids in all different ways. So, knowing what you know now, what would be some advice you would give a younger generation of kids, specifically women, to say they may not have a mentor in their life like you had, or they may not have the self motivation or the confidence that you had, or that your environment provided you? So for someone that doesn't have that, like what advice would you give these young women graduating that are overwhelmed and are looking for not the answers, but like how to navigate through this crazy journey?
Yeah, so I think one part of it is having confidence in yourself regardless of the situation that you're in. Like you're going to be able to get through it, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and you might go through really tough decisions before you get there. So when I think back to my mom, right, she went a long time. She wanted to get her master's, but there were a lot of tough times in between that where she was working before she pursued her master's. And I remember when she was deciding, like, do I even go back? Like, really, in my 50s, I'm going to go back to get a master's? Like, does that make sense? And she still did it. For me, I think it was also, so most of my family, most of my siblings are either in academia themselves, so teaching at universities, or they're physicians. My youngest did urban, my youngest, it's because if she's my kid, but my youngest sister did urban planning. But I was the first to pursue a degree that was outside of like traditionally what our family would do. And it was a little nerve-wracking, like, why are you going to business school? Like, who does that? I think to other folks seemed like it was risky, but for me it was about, I knew what I enjoyed doing and what I thought at least I was good at. And because of that, that's what drove me to go into business school. So I think as long as someone has done the work of reflecting and determining what do they actually enjoy doing the exercises and testing waters around where do they think they'll enjoy their time, because a job shouldn't be just a job. At the end of the day, you're spending most of your time in your career. So thinking about what you'd enjoy the most day to day, and then two, what will you be good at? Are you going to be able to excel? Because I think sometimes folks jump into something, they're not the best at it, but they think they just like it. Long term, like, you need to be good at what you're doing. So it doesn't mean you have to be good then. You need to just have the skill set. Some of it is natural, some of it is learned, but you need to have the skill set that lends you to be able to succeed in that space.
So for an example, I love music and I love singing, but I should not be a professional singer because I'm not good at it.
I mean, I'm not going to say that. I haven't heard you sing, Christine, but yes. Yes.
So wait, but to go back, you made a comment just, when I asked you to give the advice, you're like, just have confidence.
Yeah.
And you make it sound very simple. And to you, it is very simple. And to other women out there, in your career, you've been successful. But you make it sound simple. And I don't think, and I actually know that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast. I've heard from my daughter's friends graduating, like, they don't have the confidence. They don't know how to be confident. They don't know how to get the confidence. So can you kind of dig deeper on that? And if someone, we both know that they need confidence to do, great things and make themselves happy. But what would you advise them to do to get confidence if they don't have it?
I think that's an interesting question. I think one example for me that I'm thinking about is there's been many times in my career where I've been in a room and I'm either the only female, 99% of the time the only Muslim in the room, and 100% of the time the only Muslim woman in the room.
Muslim female.
And 100% of the time the only Muslim female that wears a scarf in the room, right? And it took a lot of time for me to get confident in that setting, particularly when it was just even when it was just the beginning of that, where I was the only woman in the room and everyone else was a man, right? To just speak up and push back. It took me a long time to get the confidence. So I say it like it's easy, but it's not easy, and I've been there. And I think what it did, the only time that I've been able to kind of step out of that was to pinch myself and say, you got to say something. And after doing it 2 or 3 times, now I don't even think about that when I'm on a call. I don't think about who's on the call with me, and that's lent itself to me being able to. But it took a while, and it took my self-training in those settings to recognize why I'm not speaking up, and understand that doesn't matter, and I can't be my own barrier to it. Because next thing you know is, and this has happened to me multiple times, where I get the feedback from those same individuals that are in the room saying, well, you don't speak up. And they have no recognition of what's going through my mind in terms of why I'm not speaking up, all right? Because it's just the pressure of the space that doesn't give me that confidence. And so you have to at some point train yourself not to think about all those barriers and just cut through it.
Yeah, and I think the pinching yourself comment's a good one. So I do it. I think other women do it. We overthink everything until we want it to be perfect to come out of our mouths or our ideas, right? We're afraid. I mean, I guess the question I'll have for you is, what are we afraid of? Or what are these, graduate females afraid of? Are they afraid of not succeeding? Are they afraid of being wrong? Are they afraid of embarrassing themselves? Like, what prevents someone, like you said, you have to pinch yourself so you would actually say it, and then you have a new behavior because then you were rewarded, you felt comfortable, your idea was well received, I'm sure. So you had that positive affirmation to continue to do it. But for someone feeling uncomfortable, who doesn't have confidence, like, what should they be thinking in their own brains to get over, any kind of barrier they're thinking of?
I'm not sure that I can answer that one, but what I'll say is oftentimes women, I think, to your point, undersell themselves, and more often than not, we're the brightest person in the room.
Great.
Having this, I guess it's easier said than done, but having the confidence, just understand the role you play and your importance in the space, and realizing, like, there's a reason you're there. If you're there and you've been invited in a certain space, like, know there's a reason for it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been in that space.
Yeah, no, I agree. Go ahead.
I guess sorry, there was another.
I guess the feeling of being uncomfortable, I would say it's okay to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to know all the answers. You have to take risks. I don't know if it comes from I don't know why women today, I mean, I never questioned it. I always had confidence. I try to figure out why that was, right? I could say it's because I was an athlete. My dad pushed me. I was always just confident and didn't care what people thought. But why was I like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I didn't care. Sometimes it was uncomfortable, like same with you. Like, I'm in a meeting, when I first started out, it's a male-dominated industry that I work in. And at times you would look around the room. But then to your point, once you start saying a couple things, you realize you're getting feedback, it's conversational, and it's almost like they're not even reacting to you. They may see you as a female in the room or, think differently, and you do have to prove yourself, but sometimes we're overthinking it.
Yeah.
And talk ourselves out of it.
Yeah.
So just kind of, it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I always tell people this, when you walk into a situation, whatever it may be, I always think to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen if I do this? So if I say something inappropriate or that's not intelligent in a meeting, what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, I'll lose credibility with this crowd, but then I can quickly gain it back. Or even, like, this is a really silly example, but people sometimes when they have an early morning flight, they can't sleep at night because they're getting up. They're worried about missed flight. Well, if you miss the flight, there's probably 4 more flights that day. And if you miss the meeting, that's probably okay, right? So it's like, always think about worst case scenario. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably not that big of a deal.
Yeah. No, that's very, very, very true. I think the part about, like, they don't even notice it. So to your point, you're overthinking it, and I can't count the number of times where I think I've spent so much time overthinking it in that setting that then I regret not saying something because another person in the room says or makes the comment and gets lauded for it, and you're thinking, well, I thought of that 5 minutes ago and I didn't say it because I was overthinking it, right? So I think even that, when that happens a few times, you're like, I need to speak up fast because next thing I know, someone else is going to say it, right? So I think that there's a lot of different factors that can start playing a role.
Some things that I used to do, this is probably more like 10 years ago, everything that I wanted to say, I wanted to make sure it was like the best idea in the room, and I would wait for it. Like, I would wait for, like, that pivotal moment. And then to your point, someone else is saying it ahead of me because I was trying to prove myself as the only female in the room. And I didn't want to say anything not smart. I don't say stupid, but that, like, would put me behind the starting line again, and I would have to start all over because I always feel like we have to overcompensate as women and over deliver and try harder all the time. So I always in my mind was waiting for the perfect answer when I could have said, 5 other things ahead of that would have gotten me to the same point. So it's, again, we're kind of overthinking things and putting it on ourselves and making sure we have that perfect answer when a guy, I mean, them in a meeting, they could just blurt out like 20 things that don't even make sense and they never think twice about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and they forget that they said it, and then they critique it, and then it goes just a back and forth.
That's right.
Yeah.
So maybe we can transition a little bit to stay on this theme of challenges that you had, I would say, in your professional and or your personal journey, and how you overcame a couple of those challenges. And the point of all of that is to share with other women that are listening to this that everyone has challenges individually in different parts of their life. And that's just part of life. It's not going to be perfect ever. And it's giving the women the right tools to overcome those challenges and the confidence to overcome those challenges. So can you walk me through a couple of those challenges that you felt in your life, personally or professionally, and then how you overcame them?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a mom. I have 3 young kids, and I think maybe on the personal side, one challenge that continuously comes up because I'm a mom is this idea around whether or not I'm spending enough time with my young kids, and understanding all the different pressures that society puts on moms, society puts on working moms, religion puts on religious expectations for or against it, and we could talk about that, like cultural expectations, particularly with other women circles that I'm in as well. So I constantly am reminding myself that why I choose to be a mom that is working, and why I choose to have time allocated to myself and my own career, and time allocated for me to spend with my kids and my family, right? I think, that's early on. It was, so I have 3 kids. My son is 7. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and then I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. And when my first son was born, it was a tough decision for me because a lot of people were surprised that I was going to go back to work. Like right after maternity leave was gone, I was like, no, I'm
Who
ready
was
to go.
surprised, your family or friends or who?
Not my friends, because I have a very small friend network, and we all face the same thing. So we get to talk and chat.
All professional working
All
moms have a
professional,
very
like
small friend
yes, we have
network.
very small network. We have 2 BFFs,
Yep.
and they go through these same things, and we're constantly. And I think that's an important thing is as a woman,
Yes.
right, having a like-minded woman that you can pick up
Yes.
the phone and say like,
Yes.
WTF, this just happened at work. Can you believe this, right? Or now I feel like a bad mom. Like let's talk through this. I'm not doing my best work at work because of this other stuff. Like having someone that's a friend that you can lean on in that way. And sometimes it could. I don't necessarily, depending on your relationships at work, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it being someone at work. But I think someone outside of your space is really healthy to have. So I get to lean on that a lot. But the critiques would be more from other women that weren't working, right? Where they'd say, "Oh, how are you doing that? Oh, don't you miss your baby?" Or, "How are you going to have someone else take care of your baby? Your baby's so young." And to the point where, like, I had made a decision to have child care at home. I had my son when it was just before COVID, so he was about 2 years old during COVID time, so everything was remote. And it was challenging to do that as opposed to just take my son to daycare, completely separate work and life. But I think, yeah, a lot of the critiques came from other women that weren't working. And, that's.
Was it within your, how did you know these women? Within your like religious group, within family? or
Um,
within the schools or daycares? Like, who said that?
so it's interesting. It actually, with that was more through just social circles,
Okay.
through friends and not direct family, but maybe family friends. But family was actually the opposite. And going back to like, I have siblings. All of them are, either in academia and working, and um, everyone has their own perspective on how childcare should be. With my family, it was more like, no, you should have a job and then go back. But then outside of that circle would be other people that you go to a park, and women at parks have nothing to do but like chit chat and critique each other. So I'd go to the
Well,
park and be like,
that's where I was going to go. I was going to ask you the next question. Those people that told you, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?
yeah.
Don't you want to be with your baby?" Why do you think that they were passing judgment when it had nothing to do with their lives at all?
I don't know that they
Like,
have. I mean, this is really mean, but I don't know that they have enough going on. Like, I think most working women don't have the bandwidth mentally to even think about another woman's life structure to be critiquing it.
I don't think we care. I'll
Yeah,
be honest, I don't
yeah,
care.
right,
Like
right,
to each their own. Like
right.
if someone wants to stay home and that makes them happy and to be with their child and that gives them 100% their ultimate happiness, go for it. Like
Right.
who am I to say that doesn't work for you? But vice versa. Like in your case, like how is that woman's why is it her judgment to say to you you shouldn't be working and who's going to stay home with your baby, right? So that always baffles me, and I agree with you. I think there's certain women that probably believe that mom is their only really purpose in life, and if they feel it is, I mean, so be it, and they're ultimately happy and that works in their family. But I would challenge that to say you probably need a little bit more diversity in your life in terms of continuing to challenge yourself intellectually, whatever that may be. If it's
Yeah,
volunteering, if it's reading, if it's doing things for yourself, like taking time apart. You don't have to be with your kid 24/7 to be a good mom.
right.
That's
Yeah,
not what you have to do. There's no definition of good mom, by the way. There's no in my mind, this is my
yeah,
opinion. There's no definition of perfect mom, right? It's whatever works for your family, for your child, and most importantly, for yourself as an individual. Because if we're not happy, right, taking care of the people we take with in our world, then that I don't think the happiness can be, followed through or continued through our kids. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think the advice and the takeaway from this one is every woman should just be confident in their own decisions. If they're questioning or challenging other women, there might be something missing in their life. So, putting someone down or degrading someone might be a jab to make themselves feel better about what they're missing. Is kind of my perspective on that. But
Yeah.
I don't know, any comments on that.
Yeah, I think it's also just like everyone's life circumstances, whether they have a partner, don't have a partner, financial situation. Like, I think it's unfair to give any critique one way or the other, because some people need to be working moms, right? To just have food on the table. So this presumption that there's choice is a very privileged presumption,
Agreed.
in my opinion. And I think so, a woman with her, stroller at the park. I lived in the Gold Coast at the time, by the way, Christine, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Gold Coast of Chicago. That
Yeah,
gives context to the privileged comment.
yeah, yeah. So that might have been part of it. Um, so, I think it's just a very presumptuous kind of type topic that is, to your point, most working women, do what works for you.
So the next thing I'm going to go to in a minute is kind of your end goal professionally of what you can share. But before I go there, one more comment I have is, and I tell this to women all the time. I don't know if I've even told it to you at one point, but your comment earlier is you never feel like you're spending enough time with whoever needs you in your life. If
Yeah.
it's your work, if it's your kid, if it's your partner, if it's your mom and dad, it doesn't matter. And you're spread thin. And everyone's like, oh, my work-life balance is off, or I'm not being a good mom. And kind of my point is like, if it's off one day, like if you gave 150% on work one day because you needed to get something done, a tight deadline or something significant, and you gave 10% to your kids, that's okay, because probably the next day you flipped it and you gave 150% to your kids and 10% to your work. And as long as we're achieving an average, that's either an average or above average, like looking at it more like a marathon and endurance race versus like killing yourself every time as a sprint.
Yeah.
When people ask me work-life balance, I'm like, I don't believe in that word. I'm like,
Yeah.
you have to do what works for you every day, and every day is different. And oh, by the way, certain things in your day are going to give you energy and suck your energy.
Yeah.
So you have to be kind of true to yourself to know where you need to go to give what you can give, but also get what you can get, and look at it more as an average. So someone said to me once, I traveled and I missed, I don't know, the 18th musical that my kid had, in the gym for an hour. And they're like, oh my God, you missed that? I'm like, yeah, I did, but I was on the other, 17 of them. And I'm pretty sure when he's 21, he's not going to look back at me and say, oh, Mom, you missed my fourth grade musical, right?
Yeah.
He's going to see that I was there for a majority of it. And I tried to be there. And if I didn't, I have a good reason. And I explained to him why I wasn't. So if that works for my kids didn't know any different. I traveled my entire career. I was there for most of it, or the significant things. And it works, right? And so for other people, it may be different, but I think women out there and moms and even, younger generations that are graduating, you don't have to pick one. Just look at what motivates you and what gives you energy, and then just do the best that you can each day and hope for the best average, not like being 150%.
I think one thing I would add there, curious your thoughts, Christine, on it is, so my father passed away last year. And
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Did I know that?
So my father passed away last year, and what I thought about is, for the last 5 years, I've been very busy with my work. And I wonder if I was letting other folks drive how much energy I was putting into work as opposed to life, or what I otherwise would have prioritized. Right. And I think back, like, it would have been nice if one day, I just took off and went and got lunch with my dad. Right.
Yeah.
And I did those things. So I think what I learned is really not letting external factors, including your boss or, other people's expectations at work, drive how you balance your time, but really having intentionality around how you're going to spend your day, how you're going to spend your week, and what you're going to prioritize when. Depending on your own, interests and what's going on in your own personal life.
Why do you think women, it's a great point, but do you think it's specific to women that do that, or men and women that throw themselves into work and go overdrive? Are they seeking something? Are they looking for this acknowledgement, this reward? Like, why do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your point, right? Around needing to prove yourself as a woman. So I think especially I think for working moms, I always wanted to prove the fact, like, just because I have kids doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to come to this meeting, that I'm not going to be able to travel for a meeting. Like, I'm going to make things work to prove a point. But at the same time, it's okay to say that this time doesn't work for me. Like, folks don't need to know exactly why, if it's a personal challenge because of kids or other life obligations. And I think it's your right as a person in the workplace to call the shots on how you're going to spend your time.
And we shouldn't feel bad about that either when we say no.
Right.
Yeah, we shouldn't feel bad. I think we say yes to everything because we think we always have to deliver. One quick story, and then I'll turn it to you for your goals professionally and personally. So there was a woman working for me one time. She had just had a baby. It was not you. And I remember my leader, there was a program for, I think it was women in leadership or just overall leadership. I think it was just overall leadership opportunities and development. It was a 2-year program. We were recommending the best candidates within our larger group. And he actually said to me, well, I don't want to ask, let's call her Jane. We don't want to ask Jane because she just had a baby and she won't want to travel and she won't want to be gone for whatever it was, a week per quarter. And I said, well, that's really not our call to make that decision if she's willing to travel or not. Yeah, she just had a child, but we should ask her for that choice if she feels that she can travel per quarter. And back to the leader that I reported to, and I said, that's not our decision to make for her. We should still equally provide her the opportunity to make that decision if she chooses to travel or not. And We did. And lo and behold, she took the leadership program and she decided to move forward. So, to your point, I think we just have to treat everyone differently and make sure we're always asking them to be treated fairly. So, maybe end with tell us about what your professional career aspirations are, your end all be all professionally and then personally.
Sure. So, from a professional standpoint, my long-term career goals would be to really, it's about combining all of my experiences that I've had professionally. So thinking about market access in a way that's outside of the US. A lot of the work that I do helps facilitate and bring new drugs to market in the US, and a lot of it's for rare orphan disease drugs. What often is forgotten in the rare orphan disease space is that rare orphan diseases are not something unique to the US, but in a lot of other countries, particularly in emerging markets, pharmaceutical manufacturers don't even think of bringing their drugs there because it's just hard. They don't understand the regulatory landscape, and it's just a big challenge, and it's not really worth their efforts financially to bring drugs to market. But in those spaces, you still have people, and where you have people, you still have disease, and where you have disease, some of it's going to be rare orphan diseases. So I'd like to work on bringing rare orphan disease drugs to emerging markets, with a particular emphasis on the Middle East, because the Middle East is the Middle East, and in the U.S. there's this perception around this negative perception around the Middle East. The healthcare infrastructure there in many parts of it is actually very strong and could lend itself to a new market for some of these drugs. That's my professional goal. Personal goal is really, honestly, to be a strong example for Muslim women, Palestinian Muslim women, that to have a career in the corporate environment. It's very rare that you see women. There's always articles in Fortune and Wall Street Journal about women in leadership, and particularly board leadership. And there are articles, I mean, it's a stretch of imagination to think that there would be a woman wearing a hijab in corporate leadership anywhere. So I think for me, being an example, that it doesn't need to be me, but being an example of strength in that setting is my personal goal.
Why do you wear that? Like, some women, Muslim women, wear the hijab, some women don't. What's the choices you have in that?
It's really a personal choice. For me, I wear it on a personal level because it's really hard, because I'll say, like, some outfits lend themselves to look a lot cuter without wearing a scarf. And so I'm like, I'll put on my outfit for the day. Like, I put on my blazer, I have my hair down. I'm like, oh, this looks a lot better. And then I put on my scarf. I'm like, it's annoying. But I do it because it's a constant reminder of a set of values that I believe in terms of how to treat other people, how to interact with other people. And it's a little bit like, honestly, it's a little bit of a burden, if you will, because in this time period, when I'm interacting with anyone, I know they're thinking, well, that Muslim girl did X, Y, Z. And so because of that pressure, it forced me to think about, how do I want to represent myself and represent being a Muslim woman? And it allows me, the reason I continue despite that burden is because it makes sure that I put my best foot forward in every interaction that I have. Sometimes I'm like, you shouldn't have said that wasn't really good, or you shouldn't have done that. But it allows me to keep myself in check in terms of my value system and all.
I think you overthink it too. Some people don't even see it.
Yeah,
So
some people don't
right?
see it. Yeah, for sure. Some people don't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do the men in your culture do anything to remind themselves of the values?
So some do. So I think oftentimes Muslim men will have a beard for that
Okay.
purpose, or they'll wear a kufi. What is it called? I don't even know what it's called, but it's like the small hat on their head. Sometimes they do that. More common is a beard.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that answer, so.
I mean, religious, so that was my personal reason for wearing it. Religiously, it's more about reflecting a modest, just the level of modesty. And so that's why hijab comes with wearing certain type of clothing.
Got it. So to wrap things up, if you were to give advice to some of the younger generation of women out there, even like let's go back all the way to middle school, to high school, to college, and you want to provide them some words of wisdom or key quotes or insights that they should carry with them as they continue to develop to become whoever they are, what would that advice be?
That's a
That's a good one, huh?
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe, like, don't quote me on this, but I think so. I'll give one piece of advice that. So my first thing would be like, don't take no for an answer. If there's something that you want to do, push for it, and continue to push for it, because sometimes you'll get no once, twice, three times, but the fourth time you get a yes. So I think if you're passionate enough about it, you keep asking for it, and maybe you just ask in different ways, and you become more strategic in the way you're asking it. But don't take no for an answer for whatever you want to pursue, and whoever you're asking the permission of, right? Whether it's your parents, your boss, a professor, whoever it is, if there's something that you think is the right thing to do for yourself, then you're your own best advocate. So that would be my first piece. And then the other piece of advice actually is advice that my father always gave, which was live life by your own value set and not by the values that others put on you. So if you're not being treated well, or you're having a challenging experience with folks around you, like that doesn't matter. What matters is how you're behaving in that situation and the values you're bringing to the table.
That's awesome. Two good points to people remember. It's interesting because I asked this question to everyone at the end, and it's fascinating how different their answers are. And I almost want to take all the comments and put them together in a book to share with people. Again, Ream, thank you for joining the Root to Rising podcast. I appreciate all your insights and your story. I was fascinated and learned a ton from it. So wishing you all the best, and we will talk soon. Until next time on the Christine Hummel's podcast. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
So Ream's